Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Talking Headless show. This is the April episode of the show. Our focus, my name is Shashi Belamkonda. My day job is as an analyst for the Infotech Research Group. This is part of my relationship with the Players Production Network, especially Paul Greenberg and Brent Leary, who run that. We are broadcasting to you on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, Facebook, almost every network that you're part of, including hello to my friends on X, formerly known as Twitter. The show basically is about elevating analyst relations and the technology analysts community. Have you looked at your email lately? Of course you have, but the amount of new news that is coming through, so I think it is overwhelming to a lot of people. Analyst relations and technology analysts play a very big role in translating geek to English, which means that your end customers actually pay a lot of attention to not only what your analyst relations build their relationship and what analysts are also saying. Now, the next show of this is going to be on May 27th with Erin Singleton and Melody Brew. But for today, we have two distinguished guests. Mary McCowan is an executive marketing and communications leader with 20 years of experience at several companies, including AWS, Cardinal Health, Progressive Insurance, and Verint. I did not know this till she sent the bio. She's an Emmy Award-winning television reporter. The story that I like to say is when I changed my career 3 years ago, Mary was the first analyst relations person. So if you think about where I am today, I owe it a lot to the foundation where we met during the AWS DC event. And I would say she kind of showed me the ropes a little bit. So I'm really very happy to bring Mary on the stage today and have a discussion. For people listening, please feel free to put your comments, and we look forward to a very interactive one wherever you're listening from. So everybody, please welcome Mary.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Mary?
I'm good. Thank you for your kind words. We kind of learned it together, right?
No, you're far ahead. And by the way, Little Bird told me you actually went on a nice vacation from in Portugal. So tell us more about it and what
Yes,
next.
yes. I'm all about lessons learned, and the biggest lessons learned was I'm not sure 11-year-old really should go to Portugal with mom on a two-person trip, but we had a blast. Turns out electric scooters are also in Portugal and wanted at every moment of every day. So
Wow.
the scenery. So I got to see the scenery, and we went to many castles and many beautiful locations, and got some great walks in. And he did not complain once about the walking until we hit about 12,000 steps, and then he was, Psh, we're done. Lots of fun and great to get away, especially in Ohio winter.
Very nice. Yeah. So we haven't caught up in a while. So what's next, Mary, after Portugal?
Yes. So I left Verint during the acquisition, and I am actually going to be teasing some fun news that I have coming up. So I'm working as a consultant and working on some project work right now for a couple different companies, and I'm really excited about it. I can't really say much more yet, but that's going to be the next professional step for me. The next personal step for me is I've been following Post Malone around the country because I love him. And Posty's my boyfriend. He just doesn't know it yet. And he's going to be playing at the Sun Bowl in El Paso. And I lived there during my TV career for 10 years. So it's going to give me a chance to go back and see some of my friends I haven't seen for probably 6 or 7 years now.
Wow, that's amazing. No, I'm so happy that you got to do a lot of stuff. But when we met, totally, you were with the AWS, and being a Emmy award-winning television reporter, right? How do you think that the uh, the background actually sharpens instincts about how a story actually lands with analysts? Like what do you think marketing teams should look for, or analyst relations teams should look for?
Great question. I think that coming from the communications background, you kind of have a set way of being consistent, being communicative, internal, external, looking at all your different stakeholders and how you can make that work. And having kind of that basis, and then just being curious is a huge feature of analyst relations. I always explain it to people. So if you do, I've done employee communications, I've done crisis comms. It's, anything you can think of within the communication landscape and marketing. And even at one point, I ran advertising for a transit agency in Florida. So go figure, I've done a little bit of everything. But my biggest area has always been in public relations. And the pivot from public relations to analyst relations is very easy, in my opinion. It is different in a lot of ways, but the big difference I noticed is that there is longer relationships that come from analyst relations. There are longer relationships versus when you're doing PR, there's a lot of turnover with those reporters, especially when you get into the tech world. When I was working with Progressive Insurance, running their PR program, I had a Wall Street Journal reporter I worked with for almost a year and a half. And when she left, I lost that contact. And that's a big loss, right? When you've got those great relationships. So what happened over the last 6-7 years or so since I've been in analyst relations, I've been able to keep those contacts. So we worked together from that first DC summit. That was great. Went with AWS. I've had some wonderful independents. I was introduced to Infotech via one of my colleagues at AWS when I was handling public sector analyst relations. And there are just so many ways that PR and AR kind of come together, but also they live in separate buildings a lot of times in corps. So it's just nice to know kind of both and have that. But I love the analyst relations part where you can make a difference. And the biggest thing is the difference that an article makes is hard to measure. You can measure clicks, you can measure how many people may have read the article, right? But when it comes to a research report and you have a report or you have any sort of note that comes out from Infotech or whoever the firm is, you can actually have salespeople find out if that works. And that is a link to revenue. So there's a huge opportunity right there. You've got a link to revenue. So you're going from being a cost center, which we technically are, right, to
Yeah.
really hoping to gain influence in the business, really help them do a good job going forward. And that link is, it's this special sauce. And I think I've gotten there in some places. It's still a little bit manual right now, but having those relationships that I mentioned with internal stakeholders, salespeople are the big ones. So what's working for you? What do you need to hear? What's our differentiators, and not that we cost less. That doesn't count. So that's a big one, right? Like, give me some specifics. So that's a very long answer to that question.
No, it's a very, very useful answer too. I mean, one of the things that you said actually very much resonates with me is also like the analyst relations community is very welcoming. I mean, we have Gary from Hotlanta who joined. Hi, Gary. So no matter, I think it's a people-to-people business, and it also shows in how you build relationships no matter where you are, right?
Yeah.
So I've been meeting a lot of people, both analysts and analyst relations. Like my son and I went on a road trip a year or so ago, and we got so many tips on where to go throughout the country.
Yeah,
From some of the people that I met. So it's really amazing.
great group of
You
people.
Yes. So you actually talked about a little bit about like how you're showing ROI. The relationship with sales is very important. Can you talk about some of the lessons about executive buy-in, right? Like how do you prove the strategic stakes that are attached to every briefing, and how executives should look at that? Because there are different types of briefings. What are some best practices you've seen?
Oh gosh, that's a big one too. That'll be a nice long answer, but I think probably the two biggest lessons learned I have, and this is with public relations too. If the executives are part of the decision-making process and part of the strategic process, and the executive is measured in their evaluations, their personal evaluations for their bonuses on effective communication to analysts and or reporters, that's the perfect combination. Because if they are part of the process, they've agreed to it. And if they are measured personally, they will prioritize it. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is a rare occurrence. you know, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It's rare. It doesn't, you can't get that in a lot of CEO or CMO performance evaluations. But if you could, that would be a great way to do it, because that prioritizes your part in the whole span of the marketing funnel, right? You want to make sure and be helpful and effective. And if you get lost along the way, that's where an issue falls in. But the other piece that I think is really important is that if you have a good relationship with those internal stakeholders and you consistently talk to them, keeping them updated. One of the ways that I was doing this at Verint was I created a program within our sales corner, which was the internal web program we had for sales folks, where we had all of the evaluations that were available for use. We had quotes that were available for use. We had information, long form reports, anything that we could do with analysts. So there was a little bucket, and it said analyst relations. Here's all the things you have. Here's all the things you need. That made it really easy. And to break it down very simply, like if you are trying to sell A, use this report. If you're
Wow.
trying to sell B, use this report. So we had it linked there. And I also think all people have different ways of working, right? Some people are very visual, some people like writing. So we did it in two different ways too. So you have kind of two different ways to look at it. So I was really proud of that. We worked really hard on it. Amy, my colleague at the time at Verint, she's still with Verint, she's still doing that fantastic work. She's so amazing. And to have that up and running and then continually educate internal stakeholders that it's there, even partners, like our partners and other folks within the company, as many people as you can educate. We called it the Analyst Relations Roadshow. First we told them what analyst relations was, because not everybody knows. And then we told them where they could find the information we had, what kind of services we offered, and then how we could be helpful to them, and how important it is for us to hear from them. So it's not just us talking at them. We want to hear from you.
Actually, I picked on several useful things from this conversation. Number one is have a relationship with various parts of the organization, especially sales, so that you can have them understand where to use the AR resources and such precious engagement items, right? The
Yes.
second thing I really liked, and nobody has told me this before, but this is probably a message for CEOs to say like, hey, include that as part of your executive, like whatever
Yes.
goals, because one thing that I have probably written about this is also AR can actually help increase the value of a company. Especially I looked at companies that went IPO and looked at when did they start hiring and increasing their AR team, and
Yeah.
totally like I think it also helps
Related.
because yes, and people are searching for information before they invest in a company, so that was good. I also
Yeah.
like your sales enablement kind of portal, whatever name you call it, where you're specifically saying like if you're selling this product, use these resources.
Yes.
That's really fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now I know we're going to have my friend Tim Banting on in probably 10, 12 minutes, but I wanted to hear from you about building credibility with analysts, right? Like, what are the strategies for earning trust? How do you make briefings count? And sometimes I'd also like to know, how does it work when you have a small team, right? So I think I have three questions in in one.
All right. How about the trust? We'll do the trust first and then remind me of the other two. Okay. So I think that the biggest thing in earning trust with analysts is consistency. So once you meet someone, you keep talking to them. So even if it's just a quick hello or a text or a quick email,
Yeah,
just to make sure to have that contact. And that's the other part of the transition from public relations to analyst relations. It's in the title, the relations, right? So you've got to keep that up. And then I think the other thing is consistency again with briefings. So some of the the companies I'm working for that are new to me, what I'm trying to do is institute like a quarterly briefing schedule. I think that once you have something scheduled and on the calendar, you are going to have something to talk about. And I'm going to go ahead and say, what's the argument for not doing it? People are like, oh, we don't have time. We don't have anything to talk about. Like, I'm not sure I'm going to be ready. Well, you know what? You don't have to say much. You just have to do kind of a general briefing for the first time, get your basic points out, talk about upcoming events that you might be at, talk about opportunities for analysts to be engaged, talk about possible upcoming under NDA programs. It helps you keep that conversation going. And there's always something new. I mean, we're in tech. These companies are there's always something new. You may not think you have something ready for 3 months from now, but having it on the calendar, and that's another thing for analysts, get stuff on the calendar way in advance. Everybody's busy. People, I I did invites for an event in June and December because I was like, as soon as I got the dates, I said, this is it. I want you all to know. So that's the best because they're busy. Everyone is busy. And it's so important that we honor their time and, and also include them in decisions. Use them for message testing. Say, does this make sense? Are we hitting the mark? Does our website say what we're telling you right now? Like, there are just so many pieces there.
that's true. No, that's a great answer. I think the other part of the answer is also when you don't have huge resources. I think people don't realize that analyst relations, like the things that you said that analyst relations could do, takes a lot of time.
It does.
It's not just briefings, it is building relationships. It's building relationships both internally and externally. I'm so glad you said that about setting calendars very early, because subsequent to some of the invites that I have early on, I get other invites that I can't honor because I've already committed to go somewhere.
Right.
So So tell us a little bit about resources, like if you're a one-person team versus you have many people, how should people manage that?
So this is a great question and also really hard to answer. I think it's priorities and really sticking to those priorities. Once I'll tell you a story. So once you do, for instance, a road show and you tell people what analyst relations does, you start getting more calls and you start getting more, hey, could we be in this report? Hey, could we be in this report? Could we have this person analyst as a speaker? What could we do here? It's great. You want that momentum, you want the excitement. But if you're a one-person team, a two-person team, you really have to prioritize. So that's getting the executive leadership to really agree with you on what the priorities are, and then building your schedule from that. So a lot of people do analyst relations like this. They fill out a bunch of reports. They may talk to an analyst every once in a while, but there's no overarching strategy or goals. You need to start from the top with your executive leadership, making that plan, agreeing on that plan. And then when that plan is in place, then you start to decide which evaluations, which speakers, what events. So it's kind of like it is a top-down approach, and it needs to be effective. And it also needs to be effective with those leaders agreeing to that plan. And then when you get overwhelmed, which you will, and there's a lot of people who burn out in analyst relations and PR for this very reason. It's hectic, it's busy, it's a lot of work. But you just have to really understand your boundaries. You really have to be strong with, okay, if you want me to do that, what would you like me to drop? Because that is what's going to happen. You cannot do it all. And if you can find some really big, powerful pieces that affect your revenue, that's always where you're going to want to live. So that's the best bet. But you have to be honest. And honestly, a lot of young folks coming up, and I hope we have more people who are learning analyst relations. I wish I had found it sooner. It's so great. They may not be confident enough to say, well, I have to drop this to do this, but you have to, or you will get overwhelmed and you will get burnt out. So I think it's a fair question to say to someone, to a leader, that sounds great. Is that more important than A, B, and C I'm working on? And if they say yes, okay, which one of A, B, and C shall I drop?
Yeah, that's probably good advice across the board. I mean, I think people get burnt out when they don't have the confidence of asking the question about what to prioritize. No, that's great advice. I want to touch on one thing where you said like a road show, knowing where analysts are. Sometimes I realized that a company had come to the Washington D.C. area, and to me that's an easy, maybe
Yeah.
we met in the Washington D.C. area. Then they'll say like, "Oh my God, we didn't know you were in the Washington D.C. area." So I think building relationships are good. The other point that I really like, which I want to reiterate, is regular briefings, because it's not that one thing that I'd like to say personally is technology is moving so fast that everybody is in a learning mode. Like
Mm-hmm.
nobody can say like I know it all, I know what's going to happen, which was very different from the past. So the more you kind of help them in executive briefings, do you like tell executives to expect a two-way dialogue, lots of time for questions, and to say like, hey, you may hear something that is not palatable, but you need to hear it. Is that something that's done on a regular basis? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in my practice and a lot of the people that I've worked with have realized that analysts have a lot of questions. That's their job, right? And that's what you guys do. And so y'all want to ask questions. A briefing where someone is just talking at you for 50 minutes and you have time for 1 minute of questions is, in my opinion, ineffective. So the way I organize my briefings, and I encouraged my team members to do the same thing, is 30 and 30. So you have a 30-minute presentation, 30 minutes for Q&A. The other little internal trick I tell people is you actually tell the executive they have 25 minutes and they always do 30. So, but I like to do the Q&A. I like to do the presentation Q&A, split it in half. And then if you have those good relationships, you can say like, hey, go through the chat. And if we don't get to your questions, like I will follow up after the call. We'll make sure and do that. And then, obviously make sure you follow up. And that also will spur interest in other briefings or deep dives in other topics. And if the hardest thing I think though is for the leaders and the presenters to understand that there may be negative comments, and that's okay. Like we are here for feedback. We're not here, this is it and we're done. That is not the approach that works best with analysts. I believe being open and having like, I love your feedback. How are you doing? Let's talk about that. That is my preferred method. And I think that kind of best practice is that as well. It is, you can't change people though. And there are just some people who are like, oh, that analyst said this about me. And it's like, well, honestly, they were right. It wasn't about you. It's about the company. It's about the message not working. It's about whatever the case is. You have to be like, you know what? Maybe they're right. Let's think about it. Can we grow from this?
No, that's really great. So, Mary, I'm going to bring in Tim. And before that, I have an episode where I just bring in one tool of the day. To those in the audience, if you see something cool, it doesn't have to be from a very big company, but if you see something cool, please share it with me. I will put this in the episode. So, Mary, after we finish with Tim, I'd like to bring you both back for some final thoughts. So, everybody, thank you, Mary. This was a lot of tips on this. It was like Analyst 101, not only for people who are trying to enter, but also people who are in the field, right? So, we'll see you in a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary. All right, I'm trying to. The title was just something that I wanted to have a podcast on. So this was one way to say that it's just a little bit fun thing. Every episode and Talking Headless show comes up once a month, usually the last Wednesday of the month at 12 noon always. So this one is very interesting. Like this is a tool called What's Up With That app. The way you can interact with the tool is through a Chrome browser. You can actually sign up at What's Up With That app, and it will tell you two things. Number one is it'll tell you what you're looking at, give you some context about what you're reading. It's almost, it's not just a tool that says that, hey, here's a summary of what you're reading. It also provides context. Like, for example, I was actually looking at my own blog post on shashi.co about AWS, and it was telling me like, hey, by the way, here's what I think others have written about it. And here's some context. It's not as simple as I'm saying that. So the concept is, this is actually from my friend Marshall Kirkpratt, who was a journalist and then became a technology founder. He had a company called Little Bird that he sold to Sprinkler. So he's doing a lot of work on taking things to make it more intelligent for you. So it's not only people who are reading it, and people who are writing it can also look at it. So this is an AI powered browser extension, gives you a lot of market intelligence. AR teams can use it to look at how the message is resonating. Marketers can look at it, look at your PR press releases and see how it is. So it's he also has another company called Hawkeye that continuously monitors one. So if you're going to look at this, there is a free offering that gives you like 3 pages a day or something like that. I actually signed up for it because it's so useful for me. So what's up with that app is where you should go look at it and add it. I'm sure you'll find it very useful. I'm really excited about this. I'm not recommending it being an analyst, but personally, I think it's a very useful tool to have. Our next guest is going to be Tim Banting. And I'll tell you, I'm so impressed by following him and looking at what he writes. He's the founder and principal analyst at So What, Now What, very internationally recognized, helping B2B companies build evidence-led narratives, and cut through the market noise. He was actually a digital workplace lead at Omdia, a lot of roles at Microsoft, Cisco, and also an analyst at Global Data. With that, I'd like to have Tim welcome to the stage.
Hi, Shashi. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I was backstage listening to Mary's comments and nodding along and thinking that was really insightful. So really pleased to get going.
No, thank you. And I live in the Washington, D.C. area. So along with you, we also welcomed a few other guests from across the pond this week. You know about that, right?
Indeed, yes. Been watching watching to see what develops. There's some very humorous addresses that the King has made recently. So always very interesting to keep abreast of what's going on out there in the wider world and not just technology.
That's true. And, there are some lessons that we can all take from King Charles' speech yesterday. The reason is, like, as analysts, we also want to make sure our viewpoint is taken the right way. So with that context, tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming an analyst and talk a little bit about what you're doing now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it goes all the way back to a long time ago when I was a youngster. I joined the army because I was very interested in electronics and communications engineering and found myself working actually with and alongside military intelligence. And I found that whole world very fascinating. So I made the transition from military intelligence, which isn't all around hardware and what's going on, but also looking at things like what's going on in the political landscape, what's going on in the economic landscape and the social landscape. So I found that absolutely fascinating. I thought it was all about tanks and aircraft and things like that. Moved out of that and went into various roles with telecoms providers, software development sort of positions as product manager, senior product manager, marketing, business development management in unified communications. I then joined Rockwell, who were a contact center company years and years ago when they were great, big, huge refrigerator size, whirring pieces of tin. Yeah, absolutely. And then so I went from one side to another. I went from being a vendor essentially into analyzing vendors for various different functions and sort of working in competitive intelligence teams within Cisco and Microsoft. And then in the broader sort of scale of things with Global Data, who used to be Current Analysis a long time ago before they merged. And then more recently with Omdia. And now I've gone out on my own with So What, Now What as a freelancer, providing competitive intelligence as a service and market intelligence as a service to vendors.
Yeah, I love the name. So What, Now What? What were you thinking when you were named your firm that?
Well, it's a reflective framework that goes back years and years ago. I think Wolf or someone like that developed this framework. It's very reflective. And what I liked about it really is it talks about a 3-stage framework, and it guides users through describing an event, the what, analyzing its significance, the so what, and then future actions and what to do next, the now what. And it's a phrase that I found myself using a lot when I was structuring presentations for senior executives or C-level executives, specifically at Microsoft. So I thought that's a lovely framework. I like the name, and it sticks. It's quite memorable.
That's true and easy to understand, right? So on that note, what advice do you have for B2B tech companies to build similar narratives that are memorable. People, analysts find it useful, and also buyers remember that. What do you say are a few tips you can give to executives in B2B companies? And by the way, thank you, Gary, for your comments. Appreciate it very much.
So if we look at sort of the way in which you can establish a good relationship with analysts, I think there's three real sort of points that I would reflect on. One is actually for vendors to bring evidence and not just buzzwords. So I think you need to demonstrate credibility and real customer outcomes, provide proof points behind the technology, especially in AI, and have that sort of market context that's grounded in reality. Because a lot of the time, a number of vendors out there seem to pitch to you as if you're trying to buy, and that's not what we want as analysts. I think the other key area is engaging early, as Mary said. Don't show up only when you need something. I can't help you shape a narrative. If you show up early, however, I can help you avoid some mistakes. So there's been a number of times when I've been at an industry event and someone has walked on stage at a keynote saying, this is the first in the industry. And then another keynote walks in on the same day and says, oh, this is the first in the industry. And you sort of think, well, if you went back 2 hours ago, you've got one of your competitors that's saying exactly the same thing. So engage with us early, help us guide you, partner with us, don't just pitch. And then I think the other thing, sorry,
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. And I think to that point is make that relationship a sort of two-way loop. Make sure that you have a working relationship. It's a two-way exchange. Don't just tell. What we want to do is make sure that we work with you. What we aren't are influencers. So we're not just going to give you an affirmation of what you want us to say. We want to go that bit deeper. And I always say a good analyst is someone that will keep you, will tell you you've got spinach in between your teeth when you go out to dinner, but do it discreetly. They're not going to shame you in front of the whole restaurant, but they'll tell you what's good about your product, what could be changed, how your service can develop, what they're seeing in the industry, what they're hearing from their buyers. So sometimes you go to an analyst event and a vendor will turn around and say, well, this is what we're hearing from buyers, or this is what we're hearing from our customers. And I always turn around and say, well, what are you hearing from your non-customers? What are the losses that your sales teams are telling you about? And it's surprising. There's not that many vendors that actually listen to why they've lost sales deals. And there's not a lot of salespeople that want to hold up their hands and say, we lost because of this, and this. They'll always default to price. It was the wrong price. So I think those are the three things. Bring evidence, not buzzwords. Engage early, and make the relationship a two-way thing.
Very cool. No, lots of important information in that. That's why I like this show, because I'm learning along with people in the audience about what it is. So in terms of, I love what you just said about, and I like what you said, spinach teeth. Like I always say, like my best friend is somebody who tells me my nose hair is showing. So on a similar term, I think that's best practice, right? Like I think they need to hear it, but sometimes there are things that they need to hear in public, and sometimes it's more discreetly. So I love that advice. Now, what have you seen in terms of AR people approaching you? What approaches have really worked with it's a new company or a new AR person, and what would you say is the best way to approach analysts like you?
I think Mary had some really good key points there when I was listening backstage. I think anyone that treats AI as AR, not AI. Oh dear, we've heard enough about AI recently, haven't we? Anyone that treats AR as a strategic intelligence function and not just a communications channel or a quarterly webinar briefing is really onto something there. What we potentially want is evidence. We want transparency and narrative that's sort of grounded in customer reality. I think as analysts, we want a proactive rhythm of engagement. So monthly, quarterly, analyst briefings. And what we do like, as Mary said, is that coherent consistency. I think those are really good ways to engage with us. We like information, we love questions, and I think as an AR person, it's very difficult to manage an analyst event because there's so many people there with so many questions. Online, you can be talking to 25, 30 people. Everyone's got questions. Everyone's frantically raising their hands or typing in a chat somewhere. What about this? What about that? And it can become very crowded and very loud very quickly. So getting back to us quickly with follow-up questions, not only just at the events, but in general conversation. We might have something outside of an analyst event that we might need an answer for. And we'll respect non-disclosures. If that's not to be revealed, that's fine. But give us an understanding as to what you're trying to say and make that narrative consistent. There's so many times that we go on to briefings where we hear a different story emerging as the quarters go by. And unfortunately, it takes some time to establish that trust and that credibility out there in the broader market. And if you're changing your narrative all the time, it's very difficult to understand what your company is all about.
That's true. I just want to share a personal experience about, briefings under NDA are so useful. At some point, sometimes when a reporter asks me a question and I have not been part of a briefing, then I'm scrambling to see, like, hey, what is this new product? And I'm testing the wrong thing. So a briefing under NDA would really help to say, like, because the minute you announce it is not the minute your product is going to be like ready. And so I've seen that. So that's good advice to have like one to many briefings so that people are prepared to say, especially there was a time when I was a little confused about pricing because the pricing on the website was what it was till it changed hours later, right? So that's good advice. Now, as a career, what do you think? Why should people take the pathway of a technology analyst? I mean, I think there should always be a stream of people coming in as people leave the industry. So, what are some good advice you can give to people who want to enter this industry?
It's very interesting because if you speak to a lot of analysts, many of them stumble into this place. They don't sort of set out from their universities and say, I really want to be an analyst. But there's a number of skills that you need to develop. I think you need to stay curious. You need to make sure that you revise your beliefs as the evidence changes. And that works for vendors, by the way, as well. So have you heard of the term T-shaped, being T-shaped? So if you look at the horizontal layer, you need to have good reading skills, good critical judgment, be able to collaborate and communicate and write well. You need to stay curious and have that sort of curiosity as top of mind. And then what you need to do is to develop that vertical section. So really start developing your expertise in technology areas. There's other things that you need to do. You need to, I call it structured skepticism. You need to sort of, when someone makes a claim, you need to sort of say, well, where's the evidence? What's missing? Who benefits and why and how? You need to have those broad cross-sectional skills. Experience in engineering, marketing, product management, etc., is really useful as well. And then you need to develop that core skill in terms of market analysis. So I love reading books. I've got loads of books on my bookshelf. I like understanding frameworks like Porter's Four Corners Analysis and Five Corners Model and Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm. All of that seems to help shape your thinking. And I think that that's really good. And if this is a career that you want or want to indeed embark on, start a blog and start writing. Even if it's on a hobby or a skill or something you feel passionate about, start developing those writing skills, because having that structured thought is something that AI won't be able to replace. Being able to ask those questions and understand the market and the market dynamics is something that just the AI still can't really sort of cope with well.
That's true. You said those books very fast, but I don't worry because I can always ask the transcript, hey, give me the names of all the books Tim mentioned, and it's going to give it to me. Which leads me to the next question, which is like, what are, in your opinion, are some emerging technology trends that may, impact both analyst relations and analysts?
Wow. Well, I made that. I stumbled over AR and AI. I think that's going to be a big area, as everyone sort of knows. The sort of relationship with AI becomes more forensic and more evidence driven, and I can trawl through press releases and annual reports and blogs and social media really quickly, and I can validate a vendor's claims with using large scale data within minutes. So I think what we're finding now is, as an analyst, I can almost get to almost like a real-time market sensing rather than offering rear view commentary on what's happened on the market. It's so quick now that I can use a number of tools just to quickly get a understanding of what's going on out there. And that really puts me in a good stead to sort of formulate some of my thoughts. So I think what we're seeing is analyst firms are going to start offering dashboards and telemetry more rather than these big lengthy reports and market forecasts that read more like a dissertation, and that they'll certainly add sort of different looking interfaces to portals, I think. So I think that's a big area. Obviously AI, generative AI, nice things like, as a small company, scaling up my company, I use Google Notebook LM. So I put all of my analysis and all of my blog posts and insights into Google LM. And that really helps me to sort of help ask questions. When was the last time I was on a Zoom call and they mentioned this? When I spoke to WebEx, or they were talking about Microsoft Teams integration, what hardware were they talking about that integrates? That really helps me recall things really quickly. So my time to market is accelerated by the use of AI technologies.
That's really good. I'm going to bring Mary back, and I'll watch while you both talk and duke it out.
No. Well, it's great to be both sides of the fence. I love this format. It's really good.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Mary. And before that, I wanted to give a shout out to Gary. I've known Gary, again, like I think in a lot of times, both analysts and analyst relations, you build a lot of good friendships along the way. So people who are listening to this, you should connect with Gary. He's out of Atlanta. Very good person to know. Thank you very much for being on the show, Gary. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is, like, I'll actually leave the forum for both of you, but what are some things that we should avoid when doing a briefing from both of you? But Mary, would you like to go first? And then Tim, you can agree, disagree, or add more to that.
Yeah, well, yeah, nice to meet you, Tim, and in person and online. Great to meet you. I was listening, and thank you for validation that I have a clue. So thank you. I appreciate that. Actually, I'd love to hear Tim go first, and then I'll see if I get it right.
Okay. Right. So you're putting it across to me. That's fine. That's okay.
Let's see how close I am, and I'll be honest.
Sure. Well, one thing that I really gets my heckles up is when I hear someone trying to bluff an answer. I would much rather someone went away and said, you know what, I don't know, but by the end of the break or by the end of the week, I will make sure I put you in contact with an expert, and I will let you know. There's far too many times that ego gets in the way. Ego's not your amigo is one of the phrases that I've heard many a time. Ego gets in the way, and we think, I should know all the answers. I must know all the answers. And this is particularly, one of the C-level executive sort of traits. And they'll bluff their way through an answer. And you'll think, oh, that didn't really land. I'd much rather they turned round and she said, or he said, I'll get back to you by the end of the day if we're at an analyst event, or I'll get back to you by the end of the week. That, to me, I think is a sign of, I really trust someone that will do that. Take the time to understand the question and prepare the answer.
that's a mature leader that can do that. And yeah, that's part of my, so started with media training back when I did PR, and now analyst relations training is, it is okay to say, I don't know. It's always okay to say that. Now, does that message always go through? No. But thank you for the validation that is what we, and anybody you're talking to who's external, whether they're an analyst or reporter or whoever, don't make stuff up. That stuff is recorded and now it's in AI formats. And so it lives on. Just don't make stuff up. Our old adage, I'm stealing, ego is not your amigo. I'm stealing that. But the old adage is that if you don't want to see it on the headline of your local newspaper, don't say it. So, I mean, it's still the same thing. If you don't want to see it on LinkedIn, don't say it.
That's true. I just wanted to add one point in this. Sometimes it could be cultural, and I'm only speaking about myself. I always found it very hard to say I don't know, because coming originally from India, I'm competing with 1.5 billion people. So it's almost like the challenge that you need to know. But now I've started training myself and even mentoring people on saying that I don't know is so powerful that it actually shows that you're being so transparent that you don't know. So I don't know anything about this, so I'm learning from both of you.
Yeah, it's hard. You know what? It's hard. I've had to train myself too. But I guess when you change careers, like I did several times now, you have to be like, hey, and I think you mentioned this too, Tim, just naturally curious. You're just naturally curious. And sometimes I actually learned, this is a great lesson. I don't know what y'all's ratings are for the Gallup strengths, but one of mine is input. And input means I ask a ton of questions. I'm curious. I like to know. I don't make decisions until I have all the facts. I had to explain to people recently in the last 5 years that I'm not questioning their authority or questioning their brilliance. I'm just questioning the information so I get it right. So when I relay it to analysts, it is correct. And I wouldn't think that you'd have to do that, but I looked at what I need. I have a friend who works with Gallup Strengths, and she was telling me, she goes, oh, here's the things that you need to do to let people know. And it's all that ego. And we're in a very competitive field. Tech is so competitive, and it's so a lot of egos, right? And I think it's okay. We agree it's okay to say you don't know. And the proof is in the lasting effect of anything you say. So don't say it if it's not right. And to Tim's point earlier, if the message is not consistent, if you're the best of this and nobody else has it, and an hour later someone else has it, you're not being consistent. You're not, and you can always say, hey, you know what? We listened to you all. We listened. We were wrong. I mean, no one will say that I've ever worked with, but we are adjusting. The message is adjusting. I want someone to say that. I hope with some of my new clients, I can say like, hey, say it. Like we went the wrong direction. We're going this way. Like, I think that's a good, honest thing.
So there are two takeaways for me personally and for everybody who listens to this show afterwards at the recording. Number one is, don't be afraid to say you don't know. The second one is, take questions as curiosity more than anything else, because I think it's hard sometimes for human beings to say like, why am I getting this question, right? But you are a much better person if you listen to the question, and if you don't have an answer, say, I'm adjusting. I heard a new term now, Mary, and yes, and we'll get back to you like Tim said. Now, I want to go back to this technology part also. Like I keep hearing about how somebody's job is, hey, I can only answer RFIs versus this. Like, is that going to change? I think, is there an option for an RFI being built through a series of calls and interviews? Then I personally don't like spreadsheets. So what do you both think? Maybe Tim, you want to go first?
So this is preparing an RFI or responding to an RFI, Shashi?
Both, actually. I think
the problem that I've got with AI is it's only as good as the underlying data that feeds it. Now, if you've got out-of-date product descriptions, out-of-date sales material, and it goes off and very good at collecting stuff,
yes.
But if that stuff is garbage or rubbish, you're going to have an RFI that is not going to be valid. It can be extremely litigious. You could find yourself, being sued by making something that no longer applies, or something that I think it's all fraught with danger. But that's me being my skeptic, putting my analyst skeptic hat on. I have no doubt if you've got very good, structured, up-to-date data, that it can be a very useful tool. But as we found out in the EU with the EU AI Act, when it's high risk, you need to have a human in the loop. So when I look at artificial intelligence, there's a lot of emphasis on the artificial, and you can tell when it's been created by AI. I prefer to think of it as augmented intelligence and making sure that there's a human there as that guardrail or that safety net to help.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of you, Tim, like it's only as good as the information. So we were working on a project with an RFI AI tool to fill out evaluations with our own information. The point that you made, Tim, it has to be the right information. So if you keep it, we were keeping everything internal, and then that starts to feed, the right information. Then you just have to go back and double check everything, right? That's the human interface, of course. So that's helpful. But what I was thinking when you were asking a question, Shashi, was we do a lot for analysts under NDA. So that information isn't out there until it is. So I'm thinking about something where, we could almost have, I'd love it to be a consistent database with all the vendors and everything. It's not going to be, but I'm realistic. However, I think there would be a way that we as AR professionals should create something beyond our public facing website that is for analysts. So we're doing that at Verint. And there is now an analyst facing page on Verint.com. And I think that depending on the size of the company, you may be able to do that. Propose it if you can. I think that's great. Is that, Tim, that's a good one, right? Because you get the analyst facing content. And I think that there's a way, there's always good improvements and possibilities that we can get better at sharing information. I think I go back to the consistency. We both use that word, like consistent communication. And if you're going to change your stance on something, be clear that you're changing your stance. You're not just saying something new and not addressing that you said the other thing 180 degrees different last week.
And that why matters, doesn't it, Mary? Because if it's a change of strategy, it's like, oh, well, that's interesting. So what was that? Was that down to regulatory stuff or governance compliance? Was that down to competitor that's decided to go down that route? What's changed? Why is this strategy? I mean, why did Blockbusters decide to pull the not go ahead with the Netflix acquisition? Why did Netflix suddenly go online and stop you from sending out all of those DVDs we used to get through the post? Yes. Those sorts of changes in strategy, that sometimes that why, which is a question that analysts love to sort of pose, there's a lot of great information in that. So if you are changing strategy, give us the why.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be consistent message if it's the wrong message for the market. If you're changing messaging, give us the why, because that to us is very powerful, and it could indicate, here's a vendor that really gets it.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a proverb I read somewhere. No matter how far you have gone on the wrong road, turn back.
Yes.
Yes.
There's always a turnaround. Yep.
Wasn't that interesting? I mean, I've with vendors, sometimes you get to a point where they'll have this big launch and they'll be so far down the road that it's too far to turn around from a bad strategy. And you think, if only you'd got to speak to us earlier. There was a company I used to work for that were going, I won't mention names, but they launched a very expensive hardware video conferencing system and service. And it was just at the time when Skype was coming out. And I sort of thought, well, does this really make sense to spend thousands of dollars on a piece of hardware and a service when I can get this for free over the internet? And I would have thought, has anyone actually said this is a really bad strategy? Has anyone really sort of, engage with analysts quickly, make sure that if you're going to launch something, it's rock solid, because if it's a bad strategy, turn around and rethink it. Too many times, when we spoke about that dual relationship, too many times it's pitched to us rather than partner with us. And I really like that partnership. I'm a frustrated strategic marketer and product manager at heart. That's where I really got the most energy and joy from in my career. And if I can help a vendor, that's where I get a lot of energy from.
Yeah.
Very nice. Mary from the heartland of the USA and Tim Banting from London, thank you so much for being on the Talking Headless show. The next show is going to be on May 27th, and we are going to have Erin Singleton from Adobe and Melody Brew from, gosh, I should know this, but I'll look forward to that. And if you're watching this recording, please feel free to comment. And thank you very much once again. See you all next month. Appreciate it.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
This has been a Players Productions Network digital broadcast.